Hello again, friends. Welcome into Gamecock Central Radio. A win for the Gamecocks last night to kick off the Will Muschamp era, a 13-10 South Carolina victory over Vanderbilt in the season opener for both clubs. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. Wes certainly wasn't pretty. Penalties, mistakes, turnovers, but the Gamecocks find a way to beat Vandy with 2 scores in the final 10 minutes of the ball game. And South Carolina, a 13-10 winner over the Commodores. A career-long 55-yard field goal, a bomb from Elliott Fry wins it in the final minute.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think this is one of those things where it was clearly not pretty, but you look at SEC wins, you look at SEC wins on the road, and you look at a team, that won one SEC game last year, won 3 total games last year. And, we talked about it for literally months, Emerson. If South Carolina was going to have a chance at having a solid year, if they were going to have a chance at starting, maybe 2-2 in these first 4, or certainly any chance at starting 3-1, they were going to have to go win this game. So I think one thing that Muschamp mentioned early on, in his press conference was just the way these guys fought, the way they battled back, the sort of toughness, mental toughness that they showed. He even said he wasn't sure what to expect if things went bad early. And I think we saw they went very, very bad early on. So, they looked out of sorts early. They offensively just looked, to me, Emerson, they looked tight. They looked like they were playing scared. They were playing not to make mistakes, and it led to mistakes. But, I think to be able to bounce back from that, let's be honest, this was a Vandy team that was probably very much overhyped coming into this game in the first place. So not a great team, but either way, to find a way to go in there and come from behind, 13 straight points, show some moxie, show some poise. If you're a Gamecock fan waking up this morning and you're sort of trying to digest everything you watched last night, at the end of the day, what you have to take away from it is road SEC victory.
Absolutely, Wes. We've talked extensively this preseason leading into the year about youth for the Gamecocks at skill positions on offense in particular. And last night, the Gamecocks got huge contributions from 2 freshmen. Running back A.J. Turner, the redshirt Frosh out of Clifton, Virginia, had 97 yards from scrimmage. Very active in the running game, broke some tackles, ran hard, played well, and caught 3 passes out of the backfield for 27 yards. So 97 yards from scrimmage for A.J. Turner. He had another long run called back on a penalty. And Brian Edwards, the true freshman out of Conway, South Carolina, enrolled in January, showed what he could do during spring ball and came out with a tremendous debut. His first college game, 8 receptions for 101 yards. And these two played a big part in the Gamecock win.
Yeah, Emerson, I tell you, man, I try so hard not to be that person that sort of takes one small sort of sliver of information and goes completely over the top with it and sort of says, well, this guy's good or this guy's not good based on one performance. But and I think we all knew Brian Edwards had a chance to be really, really good during his time in Columbia. The upside, the talent, the potential, it was always clear. But, man, did Brian Edwards not look like a guy that could, potentially be an all-SEC type receiver? I mean, the fact you're talking about a true freshman who's playing in his first game, he's on the road in the SEC, and you're down, you're losing, you got a little bit of pressure on you. The offense is, obviously at the time before he sort of got going, the offense didn't look good. And not only did he catch, your routine balls, he goes up and makes the play of the year so far offensively with just a veteran, incredible leaping catch. So, I mean, to start with him, man, the ceiling here, is ridiculous. I mean, who knows how good this kid can be? I mean, it was very, very impressive. Not just the physical stuff that we already knew, but sort of just the mental toughness. And hey, I give credit to Kurt Roper, the offensive coordinator. He and Perry Orth, who was sort of making the decisions out there, they kept going back to Brian Edwards, and I thought that was smart. It was clear he was the most dialed-in guy as far as the receiving end of the offense. And then, man, I tell you, A.J. Turner, I I always like to look back and try to remember what I've said about a guy, and then what my expectations are, and then what actually happens on the field. And I've spoken highly of AJ, but admittedly, I think I've sold him short on certain parts of his game when I look at just the physical toughness and the ability to break tackles. I thought sort of his size was going to be a detriment to him, but the thing you look at A.J. Turner and see is not only is he very, very good at all the stuff we talked about preseason, the quickness, the explosiveness, vision, ability to make guys miss, but this kid was moving the pile forward against a Vanderbilt front seven that's pretty good, a really good linebacking core, and part of that reason is the toughness, the energy that he runs with, the effort that he runs with. If you look at A.J. Turner, even when he stopped, you look at his legs, they never stop churning, never stop trying to move forward. And I tweeted it last night. I think that this kid is very, very quickly going to be a fan favorite just because of the energy, the effort, the tenacity that he runs with. He's got a bright future, man. I had a blast watching A.J. Turner run just because he's one of those guys you sort of just almost innately have to pull for. To give everybody background, this kid is probably one of the hardest workers. I doubt you find a harder worker on this team. He's busted his tail this offseason, and it shows, man. It shows how much he cares. He didn't start the game on the best note. Clearly, almost starting the season in just disastrous fashion when on the opening kickoff he almost stepped out and then almost created a safety to start the season. But, man, did he rebound. And he would have had even bigger numbers if not for some penalties on the offensive line.
Yeah, the Gamecocks did not get off to a good start last night. Kind of a botched opening kickoff return that nearly led to a safety. But after review, it was ruled a touchback, as it was on the field. So that didn't turn out to hurt the Gamecocks, but 4 penalties for 36 yards in the first quarter. Deebo Samuel dropped a punt that led to Vanderbilt points, and Vandy led 10-0 at halftime before the Gamecocks regrouped and won 13-10. Elliott Fry, the 55-yard field goal to win it in the final minute of the ball game. Fry also made a 48-yarder earlier in the second half to finally get the Gamecocks on the board. So, Wes, I think an unlikely Gamecock victory given the way it started last night. South Carolina lost the turnover battle. They lost the time and possession battle, but the Gamecocks are 1-0, headed to Mississippi State next weekend, Saturday game in Starkville. Gamecock Central Radio, Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. We invite you to download the Gamecock Central Radio app. We're on the App Store and on Google Play. To subscribe to this podcast, search for Gamecock Central Radio. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Wes, Perry Orth, the fifth-year senior, got to start at quarterback last night, and he had the first couple of series before true freshman Brandon McElwain came in. I thought McElwain gave the Gamecocks a boost with his ability to run the football, picked up some first downs, but he did have that fumble in the red zone that cost the Gamecocks a scoring opportunity. You expect mistakes like this from a freshman. They're going to take some lumps, and they're going to learn as they go. So I saw positive things from McElwain, but looking after 60 minutes of football, Wes, it looks like Perry Orth might be the Gamecocks' top quarterback. Will he be the man moving forward?
I think way too soon to say that. I think he will be the starter at Mississippi State. And I think he showed last night, Emerson, that some people have sold this kid short about just what he's capable of doing on the field. Clearly there are some physical limitations there. He is a walk-on guy, but man, he made some big-time throws. He made some throws when he absolutely had to have them. He gave his receivers a chance to make some plays, and I thought once the offense sort of loosened things up and went downfield a little bit, took some shots, had time to get the ball downfield, I thought the offensive line played a little bit better as the game went on, sort of settled in. He did what needed to happen to sort of win the game, and I think we've seen that throughout Perry Orth's career, is that the kid has had some times where the numbers have been bad, but then he's had some times where the offense will get in a rhythm, and then next thing Perry Orth slinging the ball all over the field. The ball he dropped in down the sideline to Deebo Samuel was a great throw, and I think the guy just brings a lot of moxie to the table. Now, eventually, I think when you look at the offense when McElwain was in there, that added element, the running game, the offense was moving the ball with McElwain in there, but you could just still tell that he's a freshman. Some freshman mistakes and just sort of there wasn't quite as much rhythm to the offense, I think. But the spark, like you mentioned, was there. So I think as this year goes on, we may talk about, you may ask me that question, in some form or fashion as far as who's the quarterback moving forward in every single post-game podcast we do, because I think that it's going to be that fluid of a situation. Right now, going to Starkville, Mississippi, I think Perry Orth has to be your starter, but Brandon McElwain, I think, is surely going to play because eventually they're going to need that game-breaking ability. They're going to need that running ability to really put up some points because, let's put it all in perspective. It's sort of you have to say that this was a good win for South Carolina. Any win was a good win for South Carolina, but you also, the elephant in the room is also that, hey, if they're going to win more SEC road games, they're going to have to play better than they did on Thursday night. So in order to do that, the offense is going to have to continue to get better. And, I think they will. The one thing you can take from the early game issues, Emerson, is that it's all correctable stuff. It's all early season, young team, shoot yourself in the foot on the road in the first quarter you've played SEC football on the road in. All that stuff was stuff that they can clean up.
Wes, third-string quarterback Jake Bentley, another freshman, did not play last night. Do you think it's likely that he may be headed toward a red shirt now, or is it too early to speculate?
I'm going to still go too early on that, man. I had predicted that he was going to play, and I still think that was a possibility from everything I had heard leading into the game. I just think you had a couple of different things going on. South Carolina was down by 10 points for a solid portion of this game. B, Vanderbilt at one point was just controlling the clock. They had an 11-minute drive in the first half, and you could see Vanderbilt was going to be very, very conservative. So they were going to try to bleed the clock the entire game. So you had a shortened number of possessions you were going to get. And then Perry Orth and the offense found some rhythm. So I think it would be too early to sort of look at this one game and say, what does it mean for Jake Bentley? Because I think the decisions made in this one game were more based on the circumstances of this game versus some sort of broad idea of what they want to do at the quarterback position. Because you always go into a game maybe with a plan, but if you're a halfway decent coach, that plan is always changing as the game goes on. So I think as this game went on, the opportunity for Jake Bentley to get in there just sort of disappeared. There was no real time that made sense because you want to talk about mismanaging some quarterbacks. Look across the field to the other sideline. Why Emerson is Vandy's second string quarterback in the game in the first half when the Shermer kid actually at times in the first half made a few throws for you, and he got a 10-0 lead. Like what? I assumed Shermer was injured, but apparently he was not. Apparently, Mason just wanted to get free back in there. What and what planet did that logic make sense?
Yeah, it looked like Vandy was ready to step on South Carolina's throat in the first half, but then the backup quarterback went into the game for Vandy, and they lost some momentum. I don't think there's any question about that. So it was 10-0 Vandy in the early in the first half, and then the backup, I don't have an explanation for it, Wes. It was befuddling, to say the least. And Shermer came back into the game in the second half, but the Gamecock defense shut Vandy out in the second half, and that does bring us to the defense, Wes. Thoughts on the defense? There was so much concern about the safety position, and I thought DJ Smith brought the lumber, particularly a couple big hits in the first quarter last night, and Chaz Elder led the team in tackles last night. So the two safeties I thought looked pretty good, and if that kind of play continues all year, the Gamecocks should be better on defense, as we have speculated they might.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought in some ways, Emerson, Vandy'd this game up, like if this was a team that was willing to be a little more, I mean, they did, like if they were willing to be a little more aggressive, but you could tell the entire time you watched this game, in the back of your mind, you were saying, well, Vanderbilt, it feels like Vanderbilt has dominated this game, but it's 10-0. And then when South Carolina cuts it to a one-score game, you're like, Vandy is about to Vandy this game. Like they find a way to lose games, man. And I'm not saying that to take anything away from South Carolina because, to answer your question, I thought first and foremost, how many people out there, I know there's people listening that had this thought run through their head, were saying, there was a lot of Gamecock fans saying, why couldn't we have run this scheme last year? Something similar. And I know it's Vanderbilt, and you know what? If that was a really good offense, it probably looks much different, and we're having a much different conversation. But Vanderbilt's running game is really, really good. They've got a great running back, and South Carolina sought out to stop the run first and foremost. They had an extra guy in the box most of the game. They were playing single high safety with the extra safety in the box, and you know what? For the most part, they did stop the run. I thought that the depth concerns we've all talked about sort of showed as the game went along. You saw those early 2-3 yard runs sort of became 7-8 yard runs as the game went on. Kudos to the Gamecock defense for digging deep. I thought I kept watching the rotation up front, and they didn't get to rotate as much as I think they wanted to. And so I think when they would rotate guys in on the front four, and you're talking about a lot of true freshmen, the outcome wasn't as good defensively, so they had to keep rotating the first stringers back in. Well, in theory, you want to rotate, in at least the way South Carolina's going to play this thing, they want to rotate liberally all game long, and then have your fresh, basically first team in at the end. Well, they kept having to rotate the first team back in, so by the end of the game, those guys are tired. But I thought when it came fourth quarter, late in the game, they really dug deep and got some stops, obviously. They forced some 3-and-outs to get the offense back on the field. They stopped the big third down late to force the field goal miss. And then when they knew Vandy had to throw, hey, let's give kudos to a guy who's really not gotten a whole lot of it in his career. Darius English is bearing down on the quarterback during that final drive. I don't think Vandy was going to go down, march the length of the field anyway with 30 seconds, but they put pressure on the quarterback then, and Darius had the first sack of the season. I thought, I again don't want to sort of take one game over Vandy and say, oh, the defense is back, the defense has arrived. That's premature, but the way they hustled to the ball, the way they filled run gaps, just the attitude they played with. And, hey, let's give some credit to the safeties, man. I mean, DJ Smith, Chaz Elder, that position, by Muschamp's own words, has been more ridiculed in the offseason than any position on the team. And I think Muschamp, part of that is Muschamp just being directly, completely honest, and part of that is Muschamp motivating those guys because he knew they had to have a great offseason. But, man, DJ Smith and Chaz Elder were flying to the football like I've never seen them before. So, especially Chaz Elder, he was a kid that was pretty good early on in his career, had the concussion, sort of lost his way. I think it was a forgotten guy. Both those kids played their tails off Thursday night. So, I think this is a defense. There's going to be some days, some games where this defense is not going to look good. There will be some struggles along the way. But, man, you got to give them credit just for the way they played the game. And it's going to be fun to watch them mature and get better. And I think this was just a glimpse. Once Muschamp can get in this 2017 class and then start building that 2018 class, I don't think there's any doubt. there's a lot of question marks about South Carolina, but whether or not Muschamp and T-Rob can build a great defense, to me, is not one of them. They very, very quickly are going to have a pretty darn good defense here at South Carolina, I think.
Gamecock defense last in the conference against the run last year, and Vanderbilt carried 42 times for 169 yards, just under 4 yards a carry. So that's an improvement. And they limited the big runs. Wes, I thought that was an important factor in the game. 42 carries for Vandy. They were toting the rock. They went with the ground game last night, partially because they got some anemic quarterback play. Vandy was 8 of 23 passing. They completed 8 passes the entire ball game. And I would love to tell you that it was because the Gamecocks were wreaking havoc in the Vandy backfield, and that just wasn't necessarily the case. Coverage was excellent last night for South Carolina. Vandy had a hard time getting the ball moving through the air, and that helped South Carolina tremendously. So Perry Orth was 11 of 19 for 152 yards. Brandon McElwain, 5 of 11 for 35 yards. So 16 completions for the Gamecocks to 5 different players, headlined by Brian Edwards, the freshman from Conway, 8 receptions, 101 yards. A.J. Turner caught 3 for 27. Debo Samuel, 2 for 36. Hayden Hurst, 2 for 17. Casey Crosby, 1 for 6. And Samuel didn't get a lot of touches last night, Wes, but he played well. He had an 8-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter, and that was the only touchdown for the Gamecocks in the ball game.
Yeah, I think going forward, Debo Samuel is probably going to be someone that they have to get the ball to a bit more. Jamari Smith looked like someone who wasn't quite comfortable, finally getting his opportunity. I saw some people, of course, during the game, tweeting about it and stuff like that. I don't think you can give up on Jamari Smith. I think eventually Debo Samuel is going to have to be a huge part of this offense, and Jamari Smith is going to have to be at least a fairly big part of this offense. So I think very, very important in the world we live in now. It's very common to sort of take one game and jump to a bunch of conclusions. I don't think we can do that. I think it's important to sort of take this game for what it is